he just blotted out. He just said, "Oh my God, like he can't wait to leave Nigeria." So in our drunken state, I was like, "Leave Nigeria? What are you talking about?" So I asked him. I said, "To where?" He said, "Canada. That he's leaving this nonsense country. He's leaving for Canada." So he said that, while he was drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, in most cases,
Mm-hmm.
Nigerians, when they are planning to
They
leave, they
don't
won't
say
tell you.
nothing.
Yeah, they don't
Nothing.
tell you, right?
Until they
So
arrived. Hello,
yeah,
everyone. Today I have with me David Ojeyinka of the Fresh Start Hub. He is an extraordinary human being, one who, every time you talk to him, you will just get inspired to do more with your life, to push further. He's a natural, motivational person. And I wanted to talk to him because his story of resilience through job search as an immigrant is inspiring, but he's also had the privilege of interviewing CEOs, VPs of major Canadian companies. He most recently spoke with the CEO of Deloitte in Canada here, and I mean, he's just having access to people who have done great things in their careers while being immigrants themselves, or just while having interesting life journeys. So far. So I wanted to bring him on to talk to you and share his own experience. And, from there, we'll learn what we're going to learn from his story and also be inspired to keep going even when life gets difficult. So please join me as we put our hands together for David Jenka. My very first question is an interesting one. It's like, if the David that moved here 10 years ago could see you now, your job, your family, how life is going, what do you think he would say?
I would say that God indeed exists. because because I had no idea how my life was going to turn out. Um, I wouldn't say that. Yeah, I'm a person of faith,
Mm-hmm,
but I didn't know that in 10 years I'll be here.
mm-hmm.
I just knew that my life would be better, but I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. So, looking back, I would say the David of 10 years ago would say God is indeed alive.
Your journey sounds like you didn't expect to be where you are. So, what's a bit of your backstory? If you could just take us right back to the beginning. How did you grow up? How did you get here where you are right now? What's that journey been like?
So I grew up in a family of seven, my father, my mom, and
Yeah,
five children.
got it.
Um, we didn't have um, the the good things of life, in the sense that we didn't have access to a lot of things.
Mm.
As a child growing up, it was really challenging, very tough. It was really tough, and I remember back then growing up, I used to think to myself, I used to ask a lot of questions as a child. That, why is it that those people could um, get a better lease of life and we couldn't? Um, why is it that, those kids, their parents had cars and our own parent didn't have? So there were so many questions. Why is it that, they could provide for their family and we couldn't? Even at the age of 9,
Mhm.
the landlord of the house we were renting kicked us out,
Oh wow.
and we had to move to the rural part of town. I grew up in a city called Ibadan in Oyo State in Nigeria, and we're living in the urban side of town, but the landlord kicked us out because the reason why I remember very clearly was because it was close to I was 9 years old at the time, and my mom was saying that I'm going to be 10 in the next couple of months, and that, she would do something to celebrate it. So I was really looking forward to that. So that made me remember it. And we moved to the rural side of town where there was no electricity for the first 3 years of being in that
Three
area.
years.
There was no transformer. So it was really tough, very challenging growing up. So, but then I went to university in my third year. I've always had a very good friend who, is one of my best friends today. Amazing guy. His brother is an engineer at Chevron. So
Mhm.
we used to go to Lagos for vacation to his brother's house
Mhm.
because he had a very he had a very beautiful house. He was
Yeah.
staying in VGC,
Oh, nice.
one of the posh area of Lagos,
Yeah.
Nigeria. So I was living there. It was my first exposure to affluence in the sense that not that they provided me, they gave me a lot, they gave
Mm,
me money. It never, they didn't give me money, but it gave me the opportunity to be in an environment
mm,
of wealthy people. So he had a friend who took interest in me. He was a civil engineer.
mm,
He was doing civil engineering construction. So I was working closely with him. He liked me, and so I was like a construction project manager for him. And he just took interest in me. He saw that I had the drive, the hunger. So I worked with him for a couple of years before I then um, wanted out of Nigeria. I knew that I couldn't continue living my life in Nigeria because what the construction we're doing. It's not something that was sustainable. It's not something that I see myself doing for the rest of my life.
mm.
So I applied to come to do my a postgraduate diploma in Canada, and fortunately for me, um, I was given a visa. The reason why I said fortunately for me that I was given a visa is because I used my mom's account, who retired as a public primary teacher, primary
Mhm.
school teacher. So she was not making so much, and that was the account I used. And um, fortunately for me, I was given the visa. So, and even at the time, I was not born again. I wasn't a Christian.
Mhm.
My mom has always been, a Christian. I was born in a Christian family. But when I say I wasn't a Christian, was that I was following my parents to church, but I
Mhm.
wasn't living out the lifestyle of a Christian. So I didn't see myself as a Christian. I didn't even want to be associated with it because I
Mm.
was really mad at God
Mm.
as a young child because I was thinking to myself, because think about it, my
Right.
mom has always raised up to pray. Like we
Mm.
pray whenever we are going to bed every night. We pray whenever we do praying and fasting. My household was known more or less like, oh, those are the praying people, you
Got
know.
it.
And we had neighbors that were not praying, you know.
Mm.
They don't pray, they don't go to church.
Right.
Their children are very like, like they drink alcohol. They even encourage their children to drink alcohol. They buy alcohol, and I'm not saying that drinking alcohol is bad. Like it was in the sense that, so I grew up in a very
In the day,
conservative.
essentially, it felt like they were doing everything.
Yeah, so my mom is a very conservative Christian in the sense that the first time my mother ever wore a trouser was 2 years ago in her life
Oh,
when she came to
yeah.
Canada, you know.
Yeah.
So that's to tell you the kind of, family I grew up in, very conservative. And so but we saw that to me, I saw that I had this internal conversation going on in my head. They were thriving, everything seemed to be working for them. They had
Mhm.
whatever they wanted
Mhm.
when they needed it. And we would pray and fast and go to church. We go for convention. I remember, we
Yes.
have yearly convention. We even sleep in church because my mom was serving in the choir. She was in the ushering department. So we're more or less like we're sleeping in the car during the convention, because we'll shower in the church washroom. It was a very interesting time of my life, I would say. So because of all of that, and I was like, this God that we pray to must be really mean. And honestly, growing up as a child, I used to think that only poor people like are passionate about God.
Oh my goodness.
Um, so when again I saw like going to university as an escape route, oh my goodness, finally I have the opportunity not to even, you know, do this whole thing anymore. And so I was mad at God. So I went as far as I could
Mm.
away from Him. So when I graduated from university, and my friend's brother was, I had the opportunity to be staying in one room, squat with my friend. He gave my friend one room, so and he's a very nice person. He just allowed me to also stay with him. So both of us were staying together. So I was squatting with my friend who was also squatting with his brother.
Oh my
Basically, like
goodness.
they gave him one room.
Yeah.
So we were there, and I was working with that his friend, and I eventually had opportunity to come to Canada. So when I came to Canada without. I just saw coming to Canada as an escape route.
Right.
Honestly, like I had no goal, I had no dream, I had no
Hmm.
aspiration as to what I wanted to do with myself. I just knew that I wanted to get out of Nigeria. So I left, came to Canada, and as God would have it, fortunately for me, 4 months after coming to Canada, I believe I came to Canada in May, and God saved me. God
Hmm.
took over my life in September. So May, June, July, August. So 4 months after I came to Canada, I had a personal encounter with God, and that was because nobody preached to me about God.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't like I went to a church and the pastor's mouth was so sweet, like it was so convincing that I
Right.
thought, you know what, I'm gonna give my life. But yeah, I don't want to go into that now for the sake of our time. So I became born again September 13,
Hmm.
2013. That was the turning point for me, because it's a turning point for me because that was when I started getting myself immersed in learning about God from a different perspective, like reading the Bible for myself and learning about, I read this book by Francis Chan called Crazy Love,
Hmm.
and that was, what turned things around for me, because it made me to see that there's a God that is actually crazy about me. um and then I started reading a lot of books. I started with motivational books, then I started reading leadership books,
Hmm.
and while I was doing all of that, I was in college. I was at Moore College
Hmm.
doing a 1 year postgraduate diploma. So after I finished, um they said, oh, if you want to get a 3 year postgraduate work permit, you need to do a 2 year postgraduate diploma now. And back then, when we came 2013, if you have to be in the country for at least 6 months before you can then apply for a postgraduate. We call it on. They call it back then. They call it on-campus work permit.
Okay.
So you have to apply for an on-campus work permit after being here in 6 months. So I was just burning because I couldn't work, and I
Mm.
didn't want to do anything under the table.
Yeah.
I was really, really afraid. I didn't want to blow the one chance. So it's not like I was born again when I came, or I was. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm one of these Christians, like, oh,
Mm.
I can do no wrong. No,
Yeah.
I honestly didn't want to do. I didn't do under the table job because I saw coming to Canada as my one chance to escape the life of
Right.
poverty,
Yeah.
and so I didn't want to blow that one chance. So I didn't even want to try anything dubious or anything
Mhm.
wrong that would then get me to be sent back to Nigeria, because when I left Nigeria, I left like I'm not coming back here.
Okay.
so so yeah, that was my journey to um coming to Canada. I don't know if that answered your question.
Very much so, and I hope I didn't interrupt you at the end. Did you want to go
No, no,
somewhere?
no, continue. No, no.
Okay. First of all, incredible journey that you had, from childhood to here. And there's so many points to start. I'm just like, where do I start with this spirit? Okay. Um, why did you feel like leaving Nigeria was the ticket out? Like, why didn't you maybe aspire to, being like your friend's brother that was working in Chevron? Maybe you didn't ask for connections to work there with him. Like, what made you feel like you had to leave the country to leave?
So like I said, this is gonna be like 100% transparency.
Mhm.
So when I was in the university, the I don't know if it has changed now.
Mhm.
It's either you graduate first class or a
Mhm.
2-1.
Mhm.
If you don't have 2-1 or a first class, you are
Mhm.
more or less like useless. Like it will be hard for you to get a job, right?
Mhm.
So since I was already working with him,
Mhm.
thankfully, I graduated with a second class lower division. So it's not like I didn't graduate to one. I graduated with two two. They call it two two. So it's called second class lower division.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that, you know what? So me even getting a job at the bank or getting a job
Right.
at any of these
Okay.
multinationals is almost like that dream is almost impossible for me.
Mm.
At least back then. I don't know if things have changed now. So I thought, you know what? Um, this kind of environment, the environment shouldn't, I didn't want to raise my children in that kind of environment, even
Mm.
though I wasn't in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that at some point I'm going to get married, have children.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to raise my children in that environment.
Mm.
And again, it's like I don't know if things have changed now. It's been 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
but it was more or less like, you know, you are seen in a different light if you travel out of the country, right?
Mm.
So I thought, you
You're
know,
not
let me
distinct.
just exit this place
Mm-hmm.
and go search for a better opportunity. At least I can work and provide for my family without having to do anything wrong, like without having to do something shady or, you know, that was the perception and my thinking that made me to make that decision.
Mm.
But did I know that I would be coming to Canada? Of course not. I met the guy that told me about Canada. I actually met him during my NYSC days.
Mm.
Um, and he told me about Canada, and I said, you know what, if it works for you, please let me know. And that was how the journey how the journey started. So I knew I wanted to get out of Nigeria at some point, but where and when I didn't know. Honestly, I didn't know when it was going to happen, but I knew that at some point, um, I'm gonna I'm gonna get out of the
Yeah.
country.
Very helpful. So someone actually did plant that seed of Canada in your head as well. Because I was going to ask, a lot of people know, UK, America. So, but it seemed like during NYC, you had that one conversation with someone about Canada, and that's where the seed got planted, and then you just followed it.
Yeah, we were actually drunk that day. So because I was, like I said, I was, I was on
Well,
the other
right.
side. So
Yeah.
I was drunk. So we're in Mami markets,
Yeah.
So for those people who did NYC in Nigeria,
Mhm.
they will understand what I mean by Mami market is like the grocery, will I call it grocery store or like
Talk shop.
the
Yeah.
no workshop, like the place
Talk,
where you buy
talk shop. Like,
food, you
yeah.
buy. It's like markets. It's a market.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's like flea markets. You know
Mhm.
how you get yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like the markets where we buy everything we need
Mm-hmm.
during NYSC.
Mm-hmm.
So we're there that night, and we kept drinking alcohol. We kept drinking, and we're drunk till around like I think 11:30, and soldiers came into the market to because people went to give them information that some guys, people are still in the market.
Mm.
So they came to the market
Search. Yeah.
to search and arrest us
Mm.
basically. And myself and the guy, we were together drinking. And so when we heard that, the owner of the shop told us that soldiers are coming, so we ran into the bush, right? And while we're in the bush, both of us were panting, we're trying to know when the soldiers have left. So he just blotted out. He just said, "Oh my God, like he can't wait to leave Nigeria." So in our drunken state, I was like, "Leave Nigeria? What are you talking about?" So I asked him, I said, "To where?" He said, "Canada, that he's leaving this nonsense country, he's leaving for Canada." So he said that, while he was drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, in most cases,
Mm-hmm.
Nigerians, when they are planning to
They
leave, they
don't
won't
say
tell you.
nothing.
Yeah, they don't
Nothing
tell you, right?
until they've
So
arrived. Yeah.
the guy didn't know when he said that,
Mm, it's
but
them.
it's like he was thinking out loud.
Yeah.
And then he realized that, oh, he already mentioned it to
Yeah.
beside me.
Yeah.
And then the next day I followed up with him. I said, "Oh, that thing you told me yesterday,
Yeah.
last night." So
Mm-hmm.
at first he wanted to
Cover it.
deny that, oh, that I didn't see. I said, oh,
Yeah.
you are my guy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's up? Tell
Mm-hmm.
me more. So he said I should not tell anybody, that I should not tell anybody that, he's planning, that he does not even know why he told me that he's leaving Nigeria. I said, so you're leaving. Are you planning or you have already applied? So he told me he has already
Mm-hmm.
applied. that even the day before,
Mm-hmm.
that during the day before, that his agent texted him that
Oh wow.
they've reached back to her that that he should they've sent his passport
Mm-hmm.
to her. So, and he told me that in most cases, when they send passport to you to go do your health checkup,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that means that they are at the verge of giving you
The
the
thing.
visa,
Yeah.
right? So I said, oh, you know what? If it works out, let me know. So that was how the journey to Canada started. So I didn't even know much about Canada.
Yeah.
Canada wasn't the big buzzword back then. It
Yes.
was more US or
Okay.
UK
Exactly. Yeah.
or even Australia a little bit, but Canada
Yes.
wasn't,
Yeah.
I never ever thought I would travel, I would come to Canada in my life.
I guess you could call that favor moments or destiny moments that he just blotted it out, and
Yeah,
then that you even remembered in your drunken state that you remembered that he said that, followed up, and
yeah.
then followed up the next day. It's kind of serendipitous. Um, you talked about something in the previous a couple minutes ago where you said, at the beginning when you got to Canada, people were offering you all sorts of things to do to get by. And that's a story that a lot of people have as well. When people move abroad somehow, because they want to survive and they need to survive, they're offered so many things, illegal things,
Mhm,
jobs that are not documented, or even marriage to just get by.
mhm.
Sounds like your faith is what kept you from moving and the fear of returning to Nigeria.
So honestly, interestingly, when I came, the second day I came to Canada, so
Mm-hmm,
the agent that I used um, to come to Canada, she knew someone here
mm-hmm,
and told me that, oh, the guy is really nice because she helped that the guy would pick me up from the airport, blah blah
mm-hmm,
blah. So she, to be fair, I don't think the agent was aware because
mm-hmm.
I don't think she was aware.
Right.
So she connected me to the guy. I met the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the guy was one of those people that, he told me that, and I think that guy was just trying to help me,
Right.
but through the wrong way. But, thankfully I didn't accept it. He told me, oh, there are two ways that I can become a Canadian. It's
Hmm.
either I do arrange marriage or I go and declare asylum,
Hmm.
right? So I would declare asylum. I would say I'm bisexual, you know. And they had,
Make up stuff. Yeah.
it's like a cartel, right? So
Hmm.
they told me about all this that, oh, you either do arranged marriage, that I will go back to the school to collect my money, tell them I'm no more interested. They'll give me the money back. That the money I paid, I was supposed to use to go to school, I would use it to pay for either the arranged marriage or, asylum. So for the asylum, I'll pay a lawyer, you
Hmm.
know, the whole process. They already told me about the whole process. And imagine landing in Canada today and the next day, that's what
That's
they're
true.
telling
Right.
you.
Just the next day. Wow.
But honestly, the reason why I didn't do it was because I was very, very worried for my mom. That was the reason because I
You
thought
don't
that
want to end up in jail. How is she gonna find you?
yeah, my mom used to call me every day when I just came, because she was very scared that we didn't know anybody in Canada. Nobody in my family had ever traveled out of Nigeria before.
Wow.
So it was very foreign, very new to her.
Mm-hmm.
And she thought, you know what? So she would always call me either every day or every other day,
Hmm.
just to, even if it's just 20 seconds, just to hear my voice, to see how I'm doing, hope everything is good. Um, but so that was the reason why I didn't do it, honestly, because I was worried that what if I get arrested and I'm sent to jail
Hmm.
and my mom is trying to reach me and
Hmm.
she can't reach me and she has high blood pressure issue. So I don't want her to now get, she
Right.
get high
Oh
blood
my goodness.
pressure,
Yeah.
gets off, off the chart
Hmm.
and she passes on as a result
Hmm.
of that. I would never forgive myself. I would live with that guilt for the rest of my life. So
Hmm.
that's the reason why I didn't do it. Nothing else. Honestly, like that was my fear
Right.
that, you know what, I may be caught. It might have worked for every other
Yes.
person
Yeah.
or, um, you know, but when it comes to me, it may not work. So that's why I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Not because I was like, I felt like I was better off than those people.
Yeah. Okay. That's
No,
good.
I just didn't do it for that. But and again, I also thought that even though I was an unbeliever. I just thought that, okay, what if I want to go into politics? Honestly, another reason. What if I
Hmm.
want to go into
They would dig
politics
it up, yeah.
and then I now I'm talking on TV about how, everything, you must do everything the
Mm.
right way. And either the person I did arrange marriage with is watching, and the opposition will go and they will dig up your past and go and give the person money, and the person will come on national TV.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So those, or the person, like, I
You
just thought
thought
about
of
it
all the
that,
scenarios,
what,
yeah.
yeah, that I'm not gonna do. The question I asked to follow up was, I said, okay, people that don't do it,
Hmm.
do they get become citizen? They said yes, but it will take a very long time. I said,
Hmm.
but do they still get it?
Hmm.
They said yes, but it will probably take like 10, 15 years. I said, but they will still get it. They said yes. I said, okay, don't worry, it's fine. It's okay if it takes. They said, but what if the government changes? What if they change policy?
Hmm.
I said, but at least there are some people that have gotten it. I said,
Yeah.
okay, let
Yeah.
me let me go that route.
Hmm.
Even though I was made fun of,
Yeah.
they made fun of me. They called me all sort of names,
Yeah.
but that didn't change my mind,
Wow.
because I was more focused and worried about those two things: my
Yeah.
mom and my future, my possible political
Future.
future.
Yeah.
Even though I don't think I would go
But
into
think about
politics.
it, even though you haven't gotten into politics yet, at least to the best of my knowledge, even the fresh start hub that you're doing now, I don't know if you would you have had the confidence to be able
No,
to be so forward facing and
no,
supporting the causes of immigrants.
never. I
Exactly.
wouldn't
So
have.
it's so interesting that all the path has led you here and that you were able to stay because also wisdom, like to ask that follow up question. Okay, is it even possible? Is it possible some other way? Let it take a longer time, but at least it's possible. Wow,
Mhm.
what a story. Okay, so you didn't do the arranged marriage. How did you then proceed into finding work in Canada? What was your journey like into work and
Yes.
then gainful employment?
So I got a job. My first job was actually working at Walmart. I was arranging shelves. I worked in the dry goods section.
And you were able to do that with your international visa, with your visa.
Yeah, so that was after that was on campus work permit. So I only got a I think 6 months. So after my first program, I
Mm-hmm.
did a program at Niagara College called General Arts and Science. We call it GAS, General Arts and Science.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 2-year program, but instead of doing it for 2 years, at the time, I think they changed it. They did change it at the
Mm-hmm.
time, because I already had an undergraduate degree in Nigeria and I
Mm-hmm.
already had a 1-year postgraduate diploma in
Mm-hmm.
Canada. I could transfer
Electives.
um, all my courses to
Mhm.
that program. And instead of doing it for 2 years, we'll do it for 4 months.
Oh wow, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But they eventually changed it, and that's another very long story. But
Okay.
so while I was doing that, I got an on-campus work permit,
Mm-hmm.
and so I applied for I applied to work at Walmart
Mm-hmm.
um, through someone who just God used. I believe very strongly that God used the guy
Right.
to to refer me to that opportunity, and I was working at Walmart in Oakville.
Mm.
Um, so I was always commuting from Hamilton to Oakville. I was working there. I worked there for a couple of months, and then the church I was working at, the church I was a member of. One day, the pastor came to me and said they want me to be the new church administrator,
Mm-hmm.
and the first question I asked was, oh, I also worked at in a factory. I was doing both together at the time while I
Oh.
was working at Walmart, and I was going to school too. But um, while I was doing that, I worked at Walmart for about 4 months, and I
Okay.
was doing the factory job too for about 4 months.
Mm.
So 5 months, May of that year, 2014,
Mm-hmm.
then the pastor came to me and said that, oh, um, we want you to be the church administrator. And I said, you know what, give me some time to pray
Mm-hmm.
and think about it. And I went back to them and I told them that, hey, is this going to get me? Will I be able to use this to apply for my permanent residency? Like, because I can get another job somewhere else at a call center or somewhere. to be
Right.
able to apply for my permanent residency. So um, they said maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but then I took the job.
Mm-hmm.
I worked there for 3 years as a church administrator, as an executive assistant
Mm-hmm.
at the church. I was wearing many hats. I was doing finance, operations, transportation, project management, everything.
Yeah.
Um, and it was in the midst of that the church also built its new a new building,
Mm-hmm.
and I also was the project manager for that construction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that was my first job in Canada, like my
Mm-hmm.
first
Proper job.
full-time
Yeah.
job in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for 3 years. Then I transitioned to a call center. I worked at a call center as a collection agent.
Mm.
Um, I did that for I think 8 months, if I can remember very well now. I did that for about 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got a call from RBC one day. I've applied to many places. Then I got a call from RBC one day, and I thought it was a fraud call, honestly, because I was talking to a customer. I was trying to collect money from a customer, and I saw my phone RBC, and I thought first thing that came to my mind was, did somebody use my details, my identity to go and open a
Oh,
bank account? Why
yeah.
is RBC calling me? That was what came to my mind, and I
Mm-hmm.
was really scared. So the person called the first time. Fortunately, they called again the second time. Then the third time they called, I had to run out, quickly wrap up the call,
Mm-hmm.
and I picked the call, and the lady said, "Oh, they're calling for a first interview for
Mm.
a role at RBC." And I thought, and in my own nature, I said, "Oh," they said, "Am I ready?" I said, "Yes, like, let's do it." So they asked me
On the
question from
spot
like,
while you ran out.
yeah, like, so we
Okay.
had like a 30 minute call,
Wow.
and the lady was asking me questions about like from an executive assistant job, asking me questions, and I was answering.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea about the bank, honestly. I didn't know anything about how the bank
Again,
operates. My
an immigrant,
perception,
new
my
coming to Canada.
understanding, my understanding of the bank was you go to a bank.
Yeah.
My understanding of the bank was all these branches you see. You go
Yeah.
to a bank, they keep it in one place. That I used to think that the money I put in the bank,
Yeah.
that's that same cash, they just put it inside one big place. And
Yeah.
so whenever I need it, you
Come
know,
back for it.
they will just give me and go up there, and like it was that
Mm.
was how clueless I was about the banking system. Um so when they asked me, and I'll tell you, you will understand why I said that now.
Mm.
So I used to think that, okay, because when I go downtown and they say, oh, RBC, TD, like
Mm-hmm.
they put their logo on top of those high rise, I used to think maybe they only have like 2 floors in
Right.
those buildings, and that the people that work there, they're like the big bosses. So because someone in my church, you know, um, told me she got a job at RBC head
Mm-hmm.
office. So what I thought was, oh, because the head office is one small place that they will all know each other.
Mm-hmm.
So in my ignorance, I mentioned that person's name, that, oh, to the recruiter that was talking to me, that, oh, and by the way, do you know this person? And I was saying it like, I said, so that you can validate that I'm not telling you, I'm not lying to you, that I'm really good at what I do as an executive assistant. I said, in fact, ask this person. And she said, who is this person? I mentioned the person's name. And she said, oh, interestingly, we sit very close by with each other. And so she went to ask the person, and the person said good things about me.
Oh, so it actually worked out the way you thought, because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of a
So,
coincidence because it might have been
so
this.
exactly. So she was like, okay, you know what? Before she even went to ask the person, she said, come in for an in-person interview, and I like you, blah blah blah, and we went.
Mm.
And that was how I got my first job at RBC
Wow.
as an executive assistant.
Mm. Everything just kind of adds up. But first of all, when you took the first job at the church and you asked about whether it would lead to PR, did it eventually lead to PR? What was your time? Like, what did the time to PR take? And I'm asking because, previously the person told you it would take 10 to 15 years to get PR. So what did it actually take from when you came to
Well,
Canada?
it was after I got my PR, after I left. I stopped working at the church. while I was working at the call center, even though I put in my application um, while I was working at the church, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have enough points.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was later on, I think 2 years after I put in my application
Mm-hmm.
was when I got called, um, I got invitation to apply. I think that's what they call it,
Yeah.
to apply for my permanent residency.
So the
And
whole
then I
process took about
submitted.
how many years?
It took about 2 years, I
From
would
when you
say.
came
The
to
whole
Canada?
process. Oh, no, no, no. From when I came to Canada, the whole process to getting my permanent residency um, it took about 4 years. 4 years.
So they would have had you sell your life for just 4 years of
Yeah,
waiting.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.